I really, really love what you were able to bring in and really invite the concept that small fixes will never really get you to where you natural are. And it's really about making a big jump often for many of us and really going into nature and tapping into where we've come from. And I guess $1 million question that many of us young entrepreneurs are living with is the concept. Maybe you're familiar with Elliot Hulse,
I am not actually.
advocate of the three main points of energy within the body, which are intellect in the head, intuition within the heart, and instinct within the sacrum. And one thing that really struck me, and I think for a lot of young people, was during one of his conferences, he talked about so many of us are living around with traumas that are stored within our bodily tissues. And one thing that he said was, all of it is not reversible. You can do the best to try to limit their expression, but you'll never truly be able to get rid of them completely. And I'd like to know, what is your stance on that?
So there's different degrees of trauma and pain that we can reverse. Some can be reversed completely. And I have witnessed that myself and within myself as well as within other people. And then there are traumas that, I don't know whether it's appropriate to go into this, but people can have trauma from past lives. They can bring trauma. So we don't come in as an empty slate. We come in with information into our souls. And that's what I believe anyway. And when we come in with that information, sometimes it's hard to locate, like, where is the origination of such and such pain or trauma, right? So I believe humans are 100% healable. That's my core belief. And I think that if we figure out, get the right information, get the information of truth to heal our bodies, then we can heal. I think what happens to so many people is that we bark up the wrong tree for so much. There's so much information out there in terms of trauma and healing and what have you, that it's hard to differentiate. Now, I think really what this guy is saying is that, to a degree, are you going to be triggered by a traumatic event? Sure. I mean, we're sentient beings and we have empathy and feeling, and we are our empathic abilities, because I believe all humans are empathic to different degrees, will cause us to feel certain emotions that are appropriate. Like if we see somebody being hurt, it is appropriate not to be okay with that. You have feelings that come up that are uncomfortable, that, there's sadness, they may be anger, they may be rage. And those emotions, the purpose of them is to ignite within us how to make a shift or a change. And often they're not acted upon appropriately. So I think what we've lost as a species right now on the planet is our sense of emotional well-being is very, very low as a global human population. People don't know how to deal with, people have been exposed to so much trauma because there is so much happening on Earth today that has never really happened to this degree before. There's, between loss of human rights and slavery and human sex trafficking, there's so many. I mean, I could go on about trauma. There's war, and I think that we do need to respond to these things, but we don't need to hold on to them. And the difference is, like with animals, when you see a deer, for example, in nature, and she's being attacked by a lion, and she narrowly escapes the lion, she'll go find a safe spot and then she'll shake her body. And that is a release of that trauma, because as an animal in nature who only relies on instinct, because animals don't have the kind of cognitive brain and logic brain that we do, they rely almost 100% on their instinct, not on what they know necessarily. So they have to clear that trauma so that their instinct can work appropriately. Because if they carry the trauma, you're going to not be able to have your instinct work as appropriately. Then you'll always be afraid of the lion and afraid of going out. That's where we hold things in that do not serve us. So while we should respond in a way to seeing traumatic events and witnessing things that are not appropriate with the emotion with it associated with trauma, the difference is though we should not hold it. And it's when trauma and emotions get stuck within us, that is what causes us to not be our whole selves. Then it can cause some our soul can be a little bit, not damaged is not the right word, but either fractured or stained with that pain. And it's important to let that go. And I also want to say that emotions are never the root cause of a health problem. They can be a trigger, but the root cause of health issues, according to Medical Medium, is you either have viruses and pathogens, like bacterial pathogens in your body that make you sick, or you have poisons like heavy metals, radiation, DDT, and pesticides that will make you sick, or plastics and solvents. The list goes on. So when we have, and a lot of these pathogens, this is not a very well-known fact, so I'm just going to talk about it here, but when we have trauma, or when we have a big emotional event, and you see so many people will say, the stress is killing me. Literally, they are getting sicker because they're so stressed. Or they'll say, oh my gosh, my kid has made my hair go gray, right? Because of the stress. It's a real thing. That reaction is a real thing. Feeling sicker is a real thing, but it's not because of the stress and the trauma. It's the stress and the trauma produce certain blends of adrenaline that are so toxic. They feed the pathogens, and then the pathogens make you sick. So I want to make that clear, because I think in, the world today, a lot of people believe that emotions are the root cause of what makes you sick. So if you deal with the emotions, you'll get better. You might get a little better. You won't get to the root of the problem. So definitely deal with the emotions, but because it's important. You don't want to live with that, because you won't present your whole self if you carry trauma in your body. And it's like wearing colored lenses, right? So if you have a lot of trauma and pain and emotional suffering, then your lens of life is different, as opposed to someone who doesn't have that. Like if you look at a young child who's a toddler, who's been, cared for and loved and in a family that's loving, and he's a bright-eyed, wondrous child. You see so many of those children today. They're not in trauma. But you see adults, and they walk around not making eye contact, and they're in pain physically and otherwise, and they're carrying this mask over them of this pain and trauma. And sometimes a mask of like just not feeling good physically. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I really believe that we can fully heal, and we can reclaim a lot of ourselves. Do we have, some people subscribe to the fact that we have core wounding, and the core wound will never change. I think maybe that's what Eloise, is that the guy's name that you were referring to?
Elliot Holtz.
Elliot Holtz.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that maybe that's what Elliot was referring to, is sometimes people believe that you can have a core wounding, and sometimes they believe core wounding cannot be reversed. And I think maybe that could be true. I don't have a yes or no answer on that. But I think there's so much more for us to learn about our bodies. I do believe in the large part, though, that we are so healable, that we can make huge strides in recovering who we are. And we should really aim for that, because we have the right to live a healthful life.
What is the best way people can connect with you?
Yeah, the best way to connect with me is muneezaahmed.com. It's MUNEEZAAHMED.com, and contact us from the website. It's we get back to people. It does say that I'm not taking on new clients right now, because we are booked out more than a year. But we have online programs coming up, and actually that's the quickest way to work with me, is in an online program that's coming up in May. And if you sign up for the list, then you'll get a lot of information about that very soon, starting this week, actually. And And yeah, we have a lot of actually free resources. I always refer people there as a starting point because it can get people going in the direction of basic healing. And I don't have a course yet on intuition, but I don't believe I can really teach people how to be intuitive, but I think we can guide people into where to find their own intuition, right? I think that if anyone's trying to tell you how to be intuitive, that's not appropriate. I think if you are guided to find your own way of being intuitive, that is much more appropriate, because everybody has, it's like their fingerprint, right? Everybody has their own brand of their own intuition. And that's super cool and super powerful. And that's what makes us all unique. And you know, our left brain, which is our logic thinking brain, is supposed to serve the right brain or the intuitive brain. And I think a lot of it's the other way around. And I think that if you can let go of what's in your head and listen deeply into your body, you will really start to shift. And actually, in the online programs, we actually touch upon this all the time, because my programs are called intuitive cleanses. And people often come to us and say, you know, well, how do I know that if this way of eating won't work for me? I said, because you're going to learn to figure it out on your own, how to make the program work for you. You are accessing your intuition to see what works and what doesn't work. And it's in a safe environment where you can be encouraged to make small changes that you can discover step by step what's working and what's not working. And we're doing it in the realm of a cleanse, but that technique, those things you can take with you into the rest of your life too.
Well, guys and girls, if you made it this far and you've gotten all the value from Muneeza, please make sure to go to her website. It's going to be linked in the description down below. And please go leave her a message. Go sign up to her resources and go let her know how much value you've gotten from this episode.
Thank you so much, Olivier. It was a pleasure.
Oh yeah, you know what time it is. For all you 1%ers, go take out your notebook, write down everything that you've learned, and before you consume any other type of content, go take massive action to better your life, grow that community, and set your vision on the wall.